What truly happens when a sovereign nation decides to build a terrifying concrete cage in the heart of nowhere? This concrete fortress was not built to punish ordinary criminals, but to bury the true kings of organized crime alive. We are talking about a mysterious facility designed specifically to be a mass grave for human intelligence and dark influence. This massive project was not just an ordinary prison added to the country's infrastructure. It was designed as a strategic black box, merging psychological and physical engineering to end the bloodiest and most violent war in the history of El Salvador. This fierce war tore the country's streets into bleeding pieces for long decades. For long years, the streets in the major cities were not subject to the rule of law or security forces. Instead, two hidden and terrifying forces managed every detail of the shadow economy from behind the scenes. These rival factions turned El Salvador's neighborhoods into open battlefields where blood flowed daily without deterrence. The first fierce force was the Mara Salvatrucha gang, globally known by its terrifying acronym MS-13. This group did not operate as a traditional street gang. Rather, it was managed precisely as a transnational criminal enterprise. They possessed a highly complex organizational structure and a cold methodology that stunned the country's strongest intelligence agencies. As for their bitter and bloody rival, it was the 18th Street Gang, known as Barrio 18. This faction relied entirely on pure terror and violent geographical control to impose its iron will. They led a real army of young street soldiers, moving with heavy weapons and execution orders issued by ruthless commanders. For long decades, previous governments tried desperately to lock up these powerful leaders of MS-13 and Barrio 18 in various traditional prisons. But the great shock to the security agencies was that those standard prisons quickly turned into luxurious command centers. The imprisoned kings continued to manage their criminal empires smoothly from behind bars. From inside their supposedly secure cells and using complex networks of smartphones smuggled by corrupt guards, these kings controlled the outside world. With a single digital click, they ordered mass extortion operations and coordinated attacks against police forces. They ruled the nation's underworld while sitting in complete comfort. At this critical turning point, the new Salvadoran administration realized a bitter truth. This battle was no longer just about ordinary police chases in the neighborhoods. It was a war of intelligence and absolute control. The government was in desperate need of a radical solution, unprecedented and shocking, that would permanently shatter this criminal myth and isolate the leaders forever. In absolute secrecy and complete intelligence blackout, the engineering design of the most powerful prison in the nation's history began. Every structural detail of this new facility, known as CECOT, was meticulously planned for one dark purpose: to destroy any form of communication and leave the prisoner completely disconnected from the outside world. The ultimate goal behind this complex design was not illegal physical torture, but the application of a terrifying system of psychological engineering. This system relies on complete sensory deprivation and strict collective isolation, separating the prisoner from any external human contact until their criminal minds slowly collapse before the silent walls. When the synchronized Hour Zero, struck by presidential order from the High Command, the largest and most complex security operation in modern Latin American history was launched, elite tactical units and heavy military forces moved in absolute silence to arrest the top leaders and planners of both gangs, paralyzing the underworld in minutes. Fortified hideouts and luxurious safe houses of the gang bosses were raided simultaneously across multiple provinces. The tactical assault was so fast and sudden that the kings of crime were pinned down and handcuffed before they could issue a single defensive order to their armies or even comprehend the sudden collapse of their empires. This bold security plan included gathering the supreme leaders of the two rival gangs and transferring them at the exact same time. These apex predators, who had ordered countless executions against one another, suddenly found themselves shackled side by side inside the dark structures of the heavy military transport vehicles managed by the state. During this highly charged and long transit towards the Tekaluca region, the prevailing silence inside the military convoys was heavy and terrifying. The sharp glares exchanged between the two factions were enough to ignite a miniature war. but the barrels of the elite soldiers' rifles surrounding them forced absolute and desperate submission. The heavily guarded security convoys finally arrived at the gates of the new high-tech facility. This grey concrete fortress looked like a medieval castle, modernized with futuristic technologies. It was an ominous structure designed specifically to swallow anyone who dared cross its steel gates without leaving a trace behind. The very moment their feet stepped into the inner perimeter, the kings of crime were immediately stripped of all their influence, luxury, and dominant power. Behind these massive walls, there was no room for infamous titles or criminal shout status. Every individual was transformed into a mere numerical sequence operating within a ruthless, automated system. The internal engineering of this fortress relies on a complete and absolute blackout of all cellular and wireless frequencies. The cell walls are not made of ordinary concrete. They are embedded with advanced blocking materials that absorb wireless waves, making any smuggled device a dead, useless piece of plastic. The cells inside prison are giant, incredibly fortified iron cages. There are no traditional windows to allow prisoners to see the outside world or track daily movements. Instead, hundreds of gang members are placed together on multi-tiered iron bunks without mattresses, under artificial white lights that never turn off. As for the heavy cell doors, they contain no traditional locks or metal keys that can be stolen or copied. Every massive steel gate is operated electronically from a fortified central command room. This center resembles a space operations room, where automated systems monitor every square inch of the facility. This strict system was meticulously designed to eliminate any possibility of financial bribery or violent retaliation against guards. Here, a prison guard almost never meets a prisoner face to face without full body armor and heavy weapons. All daily interactions are managed via automated mechanical barriers, completely neutralizing the human element. These human wolves and sadistic kings, who were leading thousands of armed soldiers in the streets, suddenly found themselves completely deprived of power. They had to face their most feared opponent yet. The sheer and overwhelming psychological pressure of the environment of CECOT prison, where the only thing that was apparent was the reality of their permanent defeat. Here began the real psychological warfare that the state effectively planned. The prison system completely deprives inmates of tracking time. There are no clocks or visible changes in natural lighting. This deliberate temporal ambiguity makes simple minutes stretch in their minds like endless eternities. But the most bitter dramatic irony is that the supreme leaders of the MS-13 gang and the Barrio 18 gang are now locked up in adjacent sectors. The historical enemies are separated only by a concrete wall and heavy iron bars, completely unable to touch each other or issue a single command to the outside world. Two legendary adversaries whose bloody conflict caused the deaths of tens of thousands of innocent citizens now breathe the same cold air. They are separated by a silent wall that never speaks. This represents the pinnacle of poetic justice imposed by the state on the most dangerous criminal minds in history. Simultaneously, behind these terrifying walls, the chaotic streets of the Salvador began to breathe a sigh of relief for the first time. The moment communication lines were cut between the imprisoned kings and the street soldiers, those multi-billion-dollar criminal networks began to rapidly erode due to the total absence of central guidance. Without receiving direct operational orders and strategic plans from the kings locked inside the concrete CECOT prison, utter chaos and immense confusion erupted between the remaining ranks of MS-13 and Barrio 18. Pressing questions are beginning to haunt members. Who is leading operations now? Who distributes the profits? And who has the power? Many mid-level leaders and street lieutenants tried to seize power and fill the massive vacuum, but they lacked the overwhelming prestige enjoyed by the isolated bosses. Street soldiers refused to obey their orders, sparking violent internal rifts and bloody betrayals that weakened the gangs like never before. Meanwhile, the management of the fortified prison was monitoring every detail using advanced artificial intelligence systems dedicated to behavioral analysis. These systems track the slightest psychological fluctuations, voice tones, and even the body language of the prisoners during meal delivery to thwart any hidden attempt at silent rebellion. The prison psychiatrists quickly noticed that some of the supreme leaders were slowly losing their cognitive balance and sanity. The tyrannical men who used to control the life and death of millions with a single nod found themselves completely unable to control their own cell doors, a fact that shattered their psychological pride. As the months passed, the simple and strict food meals delivered through the guarded mechanical slots became the only highlight in their long, grey days. The former titans of organised crime turned into mere isolated entities, desperately searching for any sign connecting them to their lost criminal glory. Outside the prison perimeter, the remnants of both gangs tried desperately to use every impossible trick to discover a single security flaw in this fortress. They deployed spies at long distances and launched advanced commercial drones equipped with high-resolution cameras, attempting to map the walls and watchtowers from above. But the government's response has always been swift, electronic, and shocking. CECOT prison is fully protected by automated military anti-drone systems and directional signal jammers. This defensive network immediately neutralizes any unauthorized flying object, causing heavy logistical losses to the gangs. Even the classic idea of digging underground tunnels, the traditional tactic that succeeded in freeing crime bosses in other countries, became completely impossible here. This facility was built directly over an incredibly solid, dense rock formation, reinforced with deep steel foundations and sensitive seismic sensors. This terrifying prison was like an isolated island of reinforced concrete and solid steel, anchored in the middle of a vast sea of absolute security. It was a structure that loudly proclaimed to anyone approaching its perimeter that there is no escape for those inside and no entry for those who try to interfere. As the years passed in this total isolation, the names and faces of the legendary crime bosses began to gradually fade from the popular memory of the streets. Those who once dominated the news headlines turned into mere old mysterious stories told in local neighborhoods, serving as a stark warning to future generations. On an exceptionally cold night, the automated prison system allowed a rare and heavily guarded encounter. This meeting took place in a sterile room divided by a massive pane of thick, explosion-proof, bulletproof glass. For the first time ever, the system placed the leader of MS-13 face-to-face with the leader of Barrio 18. The two tyrants, who once shook the foundations of the Salvadoran state, sat facing one another. There were no weapons between them, nor soldiers firing shots. There was only a monitored intercom phone transmitting their tired voices across the unbreakable glass barrier, which physically separated their worlds forever. However, instead of shouting violently or exchanging threats as expected, they looked each other deeply into each other's eyes for a long, quiet moment. Both fully realized the bitter truth. The concrete prison of CECOT had permanently defeated their collective pride and stripped them of their historical empires, leaving them utterly helpless. This legendary encounter ended without a single dagger stab or bullet of revenge. Both men hung up the phone receiver slowly, fully understanding that their multi-billion-dollar empires on the streets were already dead. The state had undoubtedly won the Great War against organized crime once and for all. As a direct result of this great security victory, El Salvador witnessed a historic and unprecedented drop in violent crime. Peace and security returned to the neighborhoods that burned for decades, allowing citizens to live safely, walk freely, and build a new future for the first time in generations. But is this truly the definitive and victorious end of the story? Or is there a mysterious new chapter being slowly written in absolute silence behind those concrete walls? The history of organized crime always teaches us that excessive calm is usually just a prelude to a coming catastrophic storm. Many senior criminal psychologists and intelligence analysts argue that isolating the masterminds of MS-13 and Barrio 18 together within a single facility could lead to a highly dangerous backfire. It is a long-term variable that the Salvadoran government did not fully calculate in its initial plans during the construction phase. The terrifying reality that has recently begun to leak is that the prisoners, despite their isolation, have managed to develop a highly complex method of communication. They have invented an entirely new coded language that relies neither on sound nor sight, completely bypassing the surveillance cameras and sensitive microphones surrounding them. It is a physical body language that relies entirely on sending calculated vibrations through the shared infrastructure and even manipulating the frequency of their cell lights. This network transformed the silent facility into a giant neural pathway, allowing the exchange of highly dangerous operational secrets without being detected. It seems that the two historical enemies who painted the streets of the Salvador with blood have forged a secret and historic alliance inside their prison cells. This hidden alliance, born of shared defeat and a mutual desire for revenge, led the leaders of both gangs to merge their brilliant minds to create a unified syndicate. If this secret alliance behind bars succeeds, international law enforcement agencies will no longer face two separate warring factions. Instead, they will be in a direct confrontation with the largest and fiercest unified criminal network in human history, merging tactical brilliance with pure geographical terror. The government believed it had built the perfect cage to decapitate the snake and end the nightmare. However, by gathering these masterminds into a single, centralized space, they may have inadvertently created the perfect incubator for a terrifying new threat that no prison or law will be able to control in the future. Up to this very moment, this concrete box stands fortified and silent in Tecoluca, El Salvador. It hides deep within its dark corridors, classified secrets and silent blueprints that could, at any moment, permanently alter the geopolitical landscape of the entire region and redefine power in a terrifying way. This exciting and intense battle is not over yet, my friends. The conflict has merely shifted its chapters away from the crowded and noisy city streets, settling deep within the dark and narrow corridors of this modern fortress that watches the world quietly, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. Now, it's your turn to share your deep analysis and thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe this ultra-fortified prison succeeded in eliminating organized crime? Or is it just the beginning of the most dangerous deception plot in history? Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell for more mysterious documentaries.